Welcome to the Pause Awards show, where we invite past winners and future judges to talk about their journeys, inspirations, and lessons learned in their professional careers and beyond. My name is George Hedden, and I'm a founder of Pause Fest and Pause Awards. Pause Awards are celebrating business achievements of impactful businesses that ultimately go to build better ecosystems. And today, I'm speaking with our awards judge. I'm talking to Shamila Gopalan, CEO and founder of Her Wit. Shamila, how are you?
I'm fine, George. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to be part of Pause Awards, as well as having a chat with you this Friday afternoon in lockdown in Melbourne.
Yeah, it's incredible from donut days to lockdown in one day.
I know, in less than 12 hours. I mean, it's, signs of the times, I would say.
Yeah. It's crazy. Well, thank you for being here and thank you for joining us this year with Pause Awards. We are blessed to have you. And I'm very excited about this conversation because you're running a business in a space that I'm very excited about. And we've been very, we've sort of supporting it quite a bit for quite some years and making sure that we have a gender balance equal at our event. And I know you support female entrepreneurs, and that's pretty much what you do. So let's deep dive into it. I wanted to really find out a little bit what you did before Her Wit. So I found that you worked in media in Asia, if I'm right, at CNN, Fox, and Nat Geo. So what was that experience like?
Well, I literally spent I would say close to 20 years of my life in media. So I started in advertising and then moved into television rights, licensing. So the whole works, right? So the whole gamut of the entertainment industry. And then I moved, before I started my businesses, my last role was actually with Time Warner, which is now, part of Disney, and I ran CNN for Southeast Asia, and before that I was with Fox and Nat Geo, it actually gave me very good foundations in terms of setting up my own businesses as well, in the sense that with both CNN, with Nat Geo, with Fox, and pretty much a lot of my other corporate careers, one of the things that I actually thrived in was setting up businesses within the larger scheme of the entire business. So with CNN, I set up a very big part of CNN Go, which was focused around travel. That was, again, a global business that stemmed out of Singapore, Hong Kong, Asia Pacific. With Nat Geo, I built their digital performance real-time bidding platforms in terms of the business side of it. And, the same thing with Fox. So it kind of propelled me and prepared me to some extent in starting off my own business. Of course, when you have a very large brand behind you and all those resources, and cash, that's exactly right. And support, I guess, it's a very different experience. Being an internal entrepreneur is very different from being an entrepreneur, as they say.
I was going to say you're truly entrepreneur, innovating inside of the organizations, and that's great to see. But once you actually leave the mothership, it's a very different feeling because, as you know, you have everything else to take care of. You can't sort of just rely on resources and funds that are not there, basically.
And also, one of the things that I was actually quite taken aback with when I left CNN and started my first business, which was, Blink Asia, was once you do not have the power of the brand behind you, things do change and evolve as well, because that brand that you bring and that you're associated with carries a lot of weight when you're actually sitting in front of people. So I think that's something that people tend to not realize. However, one of the great things that I had was, a really strong network that I had built. Exactly. That trust and that I guess, confidence in me as a person and as an entrepreneur, kind of elevated and allowed me to overcome the lack of brand, I guess.
Yeah. So it would be all of that, and experience working in a big corporate, but now experience building new experience in doing your own thing. So was Blink Asia your first startup that you launched after leaving the corporate?
Yes, it was. So it was very much in line with the entertainment business, where I did a lot of consulting with, obviously, the big networks. So from NBCU back to CNN to Disney to Sony, I worked with all of them. Went in and consulted on different new programming, bringing brand and content together, and on top of that, I actually launched my own slate of shows. So I created my own and produced my own. And that's where I actually raised VC funding in order to create shows, right? Because it's not cheap to create a whole show. And here
Yeah.
I was creating a slate, which was about 3 to 5. So yes.
Ambitious.
Yeah, and I managed to do that, and then was obviously very challenging. But again, because I came from that background, had that reputation, and I think most of all, it's the network, it's the relationships that you have that really play a very pivotal role in when you're trying to pull those resources together, especially funding to a large extent. Yeah.
Yeah. And may I just ask you, whereabouts in Asia was this? Singapore or?
Yes, so I was based out of Singapore for 18 years, but in between, I had also spent a lot of time in Hong Kong, only because both Fox, Nat Geo, and CNN were all headquartered out of Hong Kong at that time, for the Asia Pacific region. And then I was in the US for a while as well. I spent a year and a bit in New York for work, and traveled around. But Singapore was always a little bit of the hub. And if you talk to anyone that works in Singapore or is based in Singapore, working for a large organization or a global organization, it's very common to kind of have that gamut in terms of your portfolio. You're never just looking after one region, you look after the entire region, or sometimes even international markets from a global basis, which is what I did.
Yeah. Well, Singapore is a bit of a tech hub as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great place. So what has led you to start Her Wit?
Well, so with Blink, I built it up. I exited it before I came. So I sold my IPs before I came, and moved to Melbourne about 4 years ago. I took a little bit of a break in between, just coming in, settling in. I decided to move very quickly, to be quite honest, because I was, on that path to, I guess, move out of Asia and kind of have a different experience, move into a different part of a different journey in my life, as you can say. And one of the things that I've always been passionate about is actually empowering women and young girls. Even with Blink, when I started my slate of shows, it was very much around, the themes were very much around women and empowering women. So it was very much about showcasing underprivileged, underrepresented women coming, out of hardship, using sport as a platform and empowering themselves and coming out of those situations, very much similar to youth and young girls. So that's always been a motto, or I guess a motivation factor for me. And it stems from my own lived experience, me growing up, right? Having come from a small town in Malaysia, not having, seeing, role models that looked like me or had my story, having my mother go through her own journey and having passed on at a very young age because she did not have those kinds of, role models as well, or people she could reach out to through her challenges, has always propelled me to want to work towards empowering more women and putting them in positions of leadership so that other young girls and other women can have role models, because what you can't see, you cannot be.
Yep.
So that's why I started Herwit. So what is Herwit? In a nutshell, it's really about working with female entrepreneurs. And why have I chosen entrepreneurs? Because that's my experience. I've been an entrepreneur for close to a decade, built businesses within large corporates. That's where my passion lies. And I feel with entrepreneurs, you have a little bit more of a leeway in kind of building your own story and building your journey. And most of the time, when you are on that path, you need the most help possible, right? Just like I said, when you're with big organizations, you have the resource, the brand, the money, the time behind you. As a female founder, you have none of that. It's just you or you and your partner and very limited resources. So that's why I decided to work with female founders. And what I do with them is I really help them to launch their business from ideation stage right up to pre-seed, or even before that, even go to market strategy to some extent. And then with that, scale their businesses as well. So I think before we started this conversation, I did mention that in the past 6 to 8 weeks, I've also launched a new venture, which is called
I was going to ask you about it. Yes.
Yes, which is called Mechanics of Scale. And that's a venture I've launched with my business partner, Tracy Warren. And what that concept is really the next stage after Herwit, where we take female founded businesses as well as minority businesses, not necessarily women, but just intersectional, but the underrepresented, the underdogs, where we help them scale to the point of Series A funding.
Yeah, that's great. So you have pretty much from ideation to the not seed, but kind of more accelerator, and then from seed to Series A. That's great pipeline. What are the most common services offered by Herwit in terms of helping female founders? I mean, it's great that you're doing that, and it's great that you're focusing on BIPOC entrepreneurs as well. And I would so ask you a little bit more about that too.
Sure. So I think it really is very much about taking the idea or the product or the service into market, right? And putting in the fundamentals to the business and to the idea. I think one of the things that a lot of founders have or entrepreneurs have is we have an idea, we love our idea, but sometimes other people might not actually like or love your idea, right? So you have to test traction, you have to test product market or market product fit. And I think sometimes a lot of startup entrepreneurs, especially solo or even partnerships, don't seem to do that. They go ahead and do all the other things around the business, right? Let's build a website. Let's, build our socials. Let's do all these other fun, freely things. And then once they've spent their money and time doing that, they decide to take the product or solution out in the market, and then there's no real traction, or there's no validation that's been done, and that's where they kind of get stuck. So what I do is I actually help them even from that point where don't do anything, don't build anything, go get traction, go get validation, make sure there is what you're offering, there is a want or there is a need, and there is an opportunity based on your skill set as well in order to capture that particular market that you're looking for, and be very clear about who you're trying to serve. But I think above all, one of my biggest thing is, does this business actually, what is your intention for your business? Are you looking to just have a comfortable business, something that you can do, something that's just enough for you? Or are you looking to scale? Are you looking to grow? What is that end goal? What is that exit? And I think those are some of the things that a lot of startups or people who, especially women who start businesses, don't think about. A lot of women start businesses because they have had a lived experience, or someone close to them has had an experience that they are trying to solve and create a positive impact in, right? So, and it comes from a lot of passion, it comes from a lot of heart. And sometimes that does not fit from a business structure perspective and what it means to build a business as per se. And then what happens is, when they don't get the fundamentals right, they take it out to market, it doesn't work, they twiddle and fiddle and try to pivot and do all these different things and get really, really knocked down and say, look, this is not working, I'm going to go, I'm not going to do this anymore, and then what happens is it's a domino effect, and that does not help with the mission that I'm trying to achieve, which is create more women leaders and role models in business. So I am trying to achieve that mission and trying to do it right from the fundamentals to the point where they want to go into pre-seed, seed, and Series A funding.
Yeah, you want to push them and for them to be successful.
That's exactly right. And have the fundamentals in place so that they build businesses and not just products or programs or specific things. Because a lot of times what we hear from female founders is, when I stand in front of an investor, they don't understand what I'm trying to do. I never get funded. That's so much difficulty in getting funded, right? Like 2.6% of female founders get funded. It's not that there isn't liquidity in the market, albeit I will agree that Australia as an investment market is very risk averse and does not have the ecosystem that a lot of other more progressive, I think, ecosystems have, like Singapore or the US or Israel, or even some European nations, or China for that example, right? So I will agree. However, there is money in the market. Now it's about, how do I get that money? And I think there's a disconnect between what founders think they should be saying and what investors are looking for. And that's where we come in and bridge that gap. And we can't bridge that gap where you're actually trying to raise. We have to start working with you way beforehand in order that you build a business, so that when you're standing in front of an investor or a partner or whatever it is you're trying to do to scale and grow your business, you're very clear that you have a business and not just a product. And a business is more than just your service and your product.
Yeah, that's great. And so a lot of I guess misconceptions of building a business you've covered there. And I'm just sort of wondering, because you're in a pretty much business with delivering these services, are those sort of common services that you help female leaders, entrepreneurs, same as the male, or you found that there's particular ones that females require a little bit more help that you've noticed over the time, or they're pretty much the same? It's just that there is not enough support for female entrepreneurs, and you're there to help them. Just kind of trying to see whether there is particular skills or shortage in development that you actually trying to address specifically for females.
Well, I mean, to be quite honest, majority of the founders I work with are females to date. I think it's just a natural synergy or attraction because I'm a woman of color, started businesses. So, and that's just kind of what it's been in terms of the actual businesses that I've worked with closely, right? However, there are some fundamental differences between men and women just generally, and we have these discussions and debates just across when we talk about gender equality. I mean, discussions around gender equality and equity, right? So yes, there are some key differences. And I think the key difference is actually not to do with intelligence or not to do with capabilities. It's got to do with mindset. and psychology. And that comes from, societal and generational, I guess, perceptions that have been put in place for women, where women are supposed to be in a certain way or act in a certain way or have certain, additional, I guess, responsibilities, right? So let's look at just 101 basic. If you have a family and you have a business, if you're a male founder or a female founder, there are very key differences between how you divide your time and where your focuses are. I am not saying that men are not the carers. There are many, many men who are carers now in the household. However, there are stats and research that have come through, especially during the pandemic, that has shown that 80% of women are the carers and take on the responsibility of the home. So if you think about that from a practical standpoint of view, one only has 24 hours in a day, irrelevant of your gender. If 80% of women are carers and the ones who look after the home and the family and the children and everything else, how much time does that leave you to actually be able to focus on building your business and putting time into that? Right? So those itself are fundamental differences. And I think the other big point is the mindset, where women have been conditioned to think that we have to be 100%, sometimes even 110% perfect for a specific task or job. And this happens in the corporate world all the time, right? In order for us to be able to apply ourselves to it, men do not need that, because they have been told from the time they can walk that they can do anything.
Yeah, it seems that like women have to prove themselves all the time for everything they do, and that's really discouraging.
Absolutely. And this flow on effect goes has, I think, another ceiling when it comes to minorities or people and women of color. So it's just, there are many challenges and many different layers that are involved in this conversation that we can't actually get into right now. However, I do have a podcast called Unapologetically Brown, which actually talks about all these different things, which I do on the side because it's a passion project, really. And we actually break down culture and gender and race and how all that intersects from a day-to-day basis as well. So, yeah.
What have you found in that podcast? Just the thoughts that are coming to my mind right now. Some of the, I guess, biggest innovators in this world have been migrants. And I feel, again, if you're a migrant coming to a new country, you're going to be working your ass off and putting 300%, and therefore you're going to succeed. But again, it is a spotlight on you, similarly like it's on females. Have you found some stories of such kind in your explorations?
100%. I mean, there's the good and the bad, right? And there's the in between. So I have a lot of stories. However, I think you're right. I think as migrants and as that's number one. That's one category, because you see it not just in Australia, but just across the world, right? When you're a migrant that comes in, one of the key things that you feel you have to do is you have to work probably 10 times harder than, the person that was born and raised here or who've been here for generations, right? So that's something that you really have to, it's ingrained.
It is. I mean,
in the migration as well, in the migrant and with the next generation. So children of migrants also face those pressures to excel, right? And that's why it's now with the Olympics, you have this whole discussion around when athletes like Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka come out and say they have these issues and people are going after them, which is a whole different discussion. But you have this concept of Black excellence, and that concept it actually can be put across to people of color and women of color, because we are expected to have a certain level of excellence compared to people who were born in that country or were raised in that country through generations and centuries, right?
I have to say I'm a migrant as well myself, but when I came to Australia, for me personally, Australia was an opportunity which I didn't have in my country. So I wanted to excel here because now I could do things that I love, not the things that are few things that are out there that I could only take, but I'm not into that. So I could do things that I could never do in my country. And I could then push myself without any other help or political or anything else. And that was kind of an eye opener for me. So I did push myself to the max to see if I can catch my dream, what I wanted to do. So yeah, you're right there. There's a lot of different motivations
absolutely
for migrants, but also if migrant families have kids, probably will come more from a family. Hey, see how mom and dad have done hard work. You could do that too. So it kind of gets passed in by family.
100%. And you're right. You're absolutely right about the opportunity, right, George? A lot of people who migrate here, they leave their home countries and their families, not because, oh my God, I just feel like it, I mean, they do it because it's better opportunity for themselves and for their own children.
Lifestyle,
right?
Opportunity, a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's definitely, I mean, Australia is definitely opened up a lot of opportunities for a lot of people who've come here. Pretty much everyone's a migrant, right? Let's think about it. Like it is a country of convicts and migrants. That's what we're made up of. So I think it's really about trying to balance all of that out. And I think you see that very much so in the entrepreneur world, because Scanlon actually came out with a report very recently throughout the pandemic that more than one third of small businesses are actually made up of migrants or children of migrants. And that is that's a big building block of propelling the economy of Australia, right? Which it makes up, I think, the third biggest part of the Australian GDP. So it is definitely a land of opportunity, depending on how you want to look at it.
Sure, we need to open our borders again and get people flying into the country.
That's exactly right.
So I wanted to, since we're talking about migrants and females, so these role models in minority communities, how important is that? What's the impact on those communities when they see someone like them succeeding out there and being in media and just seeing the photos and reading about them, and they can associate themselves with that person?
I mean, it's going back to, and I think we kind of talked about this earlier on, it's going back to the whole point of what you can't see, you can't be.
Yeah.
Right. So when I was growing up, I never really saw brown women on television in any, shape or form. You would see specks and speckles of African Americans, but it's different, right? You're not South Asian, you're not from not Indian origin, never really had my culture. But today you see so many South Asian women that have come through the ranks. I mean, we have the second most powerful woman in the world, Kamala Harris, which is half South Asian and half African American. That itself changes the paradigm, shifts the whole paradigm of leadership and women in positions of power, right? And then, you see people in the media, you see people, in whether being lifestyle, entertainment media, or political, you see entrepreneurs, you see CEOs of company. I mean, if you look at the CEO of Macquarie Bank is, a South Asian woman, and so on and so forth. And Microsoft as well, the CEO of Microsoft.
Google as
So
well. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I mean, we're basically taking over the tech world, but hey, that's a whole different
Yeah.
discussion. Um, I think it's really, really important, because when you actually are exposed and you see people like you who come from the same background, the same family cultures, the same story, right, as you have, or at least there are so many similarities between your cultures, and you can actually, and capture that and see, look, I can actually also be that. It's not impossible. I am not stereotyped into a specific role or a specific journey of my life. Like, for example, you have just mentioned as well that when you came to Australia, it opened up opportunities for you to do things that you would not be being able to have access to if you did not come here.
Mm.
So I think it's, and it's things like that. It's really, really crucial that young girls, young women, and women just generally, and young people actually see other people who they can have synergies with and they see themselves in.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big fan of Netflix programming. There's a lot of shows with BIPOC representatives, and it does give a quite significant balance. Whereas a lot of other TV sort of stations kind of still kind of have here and there. I think Netflix has done a really amazing job in really kind of amping up that sort of program sort of section of their shows to give a quite significant value to the people of color.
Absolutely, 100%. I agree. And I think it's also, again, going back to the culture of the company as well, right?
Mm.
You have someone, their head of people and culture, their VP of people and culture is this woman that's a highly influential woman, African American.
Yes.
And it stems internally, which is why you see it externally in what they do, in what they produce. And I think that really is a good tie back to entrepreneurs and founders, and who start businesses. Doesn't matter where you are, that if you actually propel what your values are internally and you're really clear about them, then that will show when you actually put your solution or your product or whatever it is you're trying to do externally, which is going to make a positive impact in the world. So one of the key things that I'm very clear about when I work with clients or with startups is they must have a very clear value proposition in how they're making a positive impact in the world.
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to say something that you might be kind of very happy to hear. This last year, we had 65% of female winners of the awards.
Oh, very nice.
Which was 15% jump from previous year.
Fantastic. Love it.
Very encouraging. And I can now see why you really love the Indie Award, because it's for entrepreneurs that are coming from indigenous or migrant sort of communities. And lastly, this has just been an amazing conversation with you, and I'm very excited about this topic. But I wanted to ask you, you said that you're most inspired with the leaders that have strength and deep empathy. And I wanted to ask you if you have any examples of the leaders like that you can share.
Of course. I mean, there's so many. I mean, a lot of them are women of color, of course. But I think, from the Oprah Winfreys of the world to the Michelle Obamas to the Brene Browns, to be quite honest, who coined the whole concept or made popular the concept of vulnerability equals bravery equals strength, right? Which again then would equal to empathy. And I think the age of being a leader where it's top down and being very autocratic about how you want to lead is no longer relevant in today's day and age in any organization, be it whether you're a startup, you're a small medium-sized organization, or you're a ASX 200 or a Fortune 25 company, right? So I think the concept of leadership has evolved tremendously. And it needs to continue to evolve, because without empathy, how do you understand, how do you motivate people? Because companies are made up of people.
Yeah.
You sell to people. Everything is about people, no matter how much automation or AI or robotics we want to talk about. At the end of the day, we are dealing with people, and we must understand what people are, what they go through, and what it is that they are seeking from you, and what can you offer in terms of the highest amount of value that is going to make an impact in their lives. And to me, that's leadership.
Yeah, and what's most interesting in this whole thing that you just said is that we have now tools to actually be able to understand people better and communicate and evaluate. And so that's what this whole new tech age has allowed us to democratize these tools to everybody, so everyone can afford to use them and therefore find out all these insights and build better products, better develop better services, and therefore, I guess, push everybody up a bit.
Absolutely. I mean, data is very important, but data is useless if you do not implement it with the right usage, right? With the right intent. And I think strength is a big part of it, because you have to be a strong leader in terms of what your value system is, no matter how hard it is to implement. If you're going to cave at every single thing that's going to get thrown at you, then you are not strong, and hence you cannot lead. And you definitely cannot be an empathetic leader in that sense, because it is still something that, especially in large organizations, are not looked upon as a strong, I would say, value system. When you're empathizing, because you're supposed to be this, autocratic, masculine type of leader, and that's evolved, and that's evolving very much so. So you need a combination of both.
Yeah, it's much easier for new startups, or let's say even companies that have developed in the past 5 even to 10 years, to have implemented those new set of values rather than big monsters that have been around for quite some time, because it's very hard for them to change their leadership and get everyone to buy in, and everything is very difficult in big ones. So you're correct on that for sure.
Absolutely, but it's not impossible.
It's not, and they should. I mean, it's there's a pressure now that you have to have it and be better leader, and be more sustainable and have
absolutely
and all sort of stuff.
Because I mean, with the millennial, it's proven, research has proven, with the millennial and the Gen Z workforce, it's no longer like the Gen Xers and the baby boomers before that, right? It's for them, in order for them to actually be associated or be part of an organization, the values of the organization is one of the top 3 things they look at when they want to work in that organization. So if they don't evolve and change, they will have no talent. And if they have no talent, they have no business.
Yeah. People want to work for people that companies that have purpose.
Exactly. And I align with their values, right? So I think that's a big part of how the talent generation has changed as well, which is why you see so many entrepreneurs and so many startups that are building businesses around, sustainable economies, circular economies, social impact functions. I mean, I would say like 90% of the businesses I work with, actually, no, that's not true. I lie. 100% of the businesses I work with are in those sectors. So, I mean, and you just see it popping up. I mean, I talk to businesses, at least I would say 15 different new businesses a week. And I would say 99% of them have some connection to those SDG goals in some way or another.
Yeah. Well, look, we've got some award categories for those as well. We've brought in this year. Very excited about Pause Awards. And thank you again for this lovely chat. I really enjoyed it. It's quite an interesting topic that we've discussed today, and
Yes.
which is your business. And kudos to you for empowering the women and helping them grow their businesses, and getting that diversity up, and making sure that they succeed.
Well, this was amazing. It was really fun. And thank you so much for having me on. And I'm very excited about this year's Pods Awards. I love all the categories you have. You have some really interesting names for some of your categories. So I'm quite excited to see who comes through for those as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.